Today's topic is how to maintain RCM transactions in TallyPrime. So you know very well there is a forward charge mechanism and a reverse charge mechanism in GST. So today we are going to discuss about the RCM transactions in TallyPrime. Myself, Manikandan, I'm the Chief Knowledge Officer at Asset Integrated Info Systems. This session is organized by Asset Integrated Info System. They're the number one five-star partner in Telangana and Andhra Pradesh from 1997. They're providing one-stop solution for all our Tally product related and product supports and TDL and integration related supports. Especially, they are giving a complete solution for the businesses and the accountants and their accounting and finance and also payroll functions. You can reach them through assettally.com. And if you are a junior accountant, don't try to implement based on whatever I'm teaching in this session. And you should get in touch with your senior accountants, your tax consultants, chartered accountants. And if you want to get some consultation from us, you can reach us so that we can help you to implement it. Let us get into the topic. RCM in TallyPrime. First, we will understand what is RCM. So these are all the topics we are going to discuss today. First, understanding RCM. Number two, inward supplies. Whatever the purchases we made in which if there is any RCM. So we'll discuss about the goods and services separately because for some goods we have RCM, for some services also we have RCM. And finally, we are going to discuss about the RCM payments and claiming ITC. You know very well, we can claim ITC on the RCM payments, right? First, understand the GST. Okay, so we'll start from the scratch. So it is an indirect tax. So GST is nothing but an indirect tax. There is a difference between direct tax and indirect tax. In case of indirect tax, it is a liability of the dealer to collect the tax from their customer and remit it to the tax department. It is not that they are going to pay the taxes out of their pocket. Okay, so they simply collect. It is a responsibility. It is a liability given to the dealers to collect the taxes from their customers' clients and remit it to the tax department. In case of direct tax, assessee will pay the tax liability out of their pocket. But in case of indirect tax, it is the collection responsibility for the dealers, right? So in this GST scenario, a dealer who is registered with the GST Act will be collecting GST from the customer. That is called forward charge mechanism. It is a regular tax pattern. So we don't use the word forward charge mechanism. Okay, so it's my responsibility to raise invoice to my customer, collect tax and remit it to the tax department. It is called the regular taxation system in indirect tax and it is called forward charge mechanism. It is exactly opposite to forward charge mechanism, reverse charge mechanism. We shortly call it as RCM. Okay, it is playing very small role in the GST Act. In fact, the government is getting revenue from RCM, a very small portion only, but it is playing a small role, but it is very important because if you miss something on the RCM, it is nothing but you are doing mistakes or you are committing some tax evasion and you will be penalized for that. So to avoid this situation, better you follow the RCM accounting. Right? So in this RCM, the basic concept is usually the seller will issue invoice and he will charge the taxes. In this scenario, the seller will not charge any taxes. Buyer, by themselves, they pay taxes on the purchases. Assume that I'm having a restaurant business or a sweets shop business. Okay, I'm going to buy cashew nuts from a farmer or from some wholesale dealer who's not having a GST. He may be an unregistered dealer. Okay, so the thing is, I'm buying cashew nuts for 1 lakh. The seller will never put invoice for the cashew nuts with the GST. He simply pass only 1 lakh worth invoices and there won't be any GST specification in it. As a buyer, so I'll be charging GST by myself and I'll calculate reverse charge mechanism and I'll pay taxes to the tax department and future I can claim the input tax credit also. You know very well when there is a purchase, when there is an inward supply of goods or services or capital goods, company is eligible to claim input tax credit. Okay, so whatever we are buying as a material or as a service or the capital goods for the business developments. So on such invoices, if there is any taxes, we can claim it as a input tax credit. Similarly, in RCM also, here the supplier will never charge taxes. By ourselves, we have to charge taxes, we have to pay the liability and claim the input tax credit. That is a concept of RCM, reverse charge mechanism, right? So deadline to account RCM. Say for example, I'm buying cashew nuts. Okay, during February. Today is 11th February. So today I bought this cashew nuts. I'm yet to receive invoice from the supplier. Anyway, supplier is not going to charge taxes on the invoices. However, as a buyer, I supposed to remit this taxes within a month. That means if I'm buying the material this month, within next liability period is March. While filing my March returns, I supposed to declare this purchase and I have to remit the taxes to the department in the name of reverse charge mechanism. So they have given a deadline because there is a high possibility a supplier, that means a buyer of such materials, may skip the liability, may postpone the liability. To avoid the situation, tax department has given a clarity that within 30 days from the receipt of material or within 30 days from the completion of services, a supplier will be issuing invoice. Whether he is issuing invoice or not, the buyer supposed to declare their inward supplies and the RCM on such inward supplies, right? Now, I'll give you some examples for the RCM goods. Okay, so most of them would have heard about the RCM on transports, RCM on rent kind of a service, or it is a service. Rent and transportations are the services, right? There are some goods in which RCM is applicable. Okay, it may be a new situation to you. So, for example, nuts. As I said, if you are a caterer, if you are a hotel businessman, or you have a sweet shop, you'll be buying nuts like cashews, almonds, etc. So similarly, tobacco leaves, silk yarn, okay, coal, raw cotton. Okay, for these materials, you may not pay GST to your supplier. That means most of the time the suppliers are the farmers. Okay, so government wants to identify how much you are consuming. Okay, so the supplier may not charge with GST, may not collect GST from you. As a buyer, you're supposed to pay RCM on your purchases and you can claim input tax credit. That's a very important point because input credit is a great benefit on GST. We have to claim it properly to avoid our tax liabilities. Then RCM applicable services. Number one is goods transportation services. Assuming that I'm running a business, my transporter, it may be an unregistered dealer. Say, for example, I'm manufacturing goods. I'm just transporting goods from my factory to my customer place. I'm getting help from a lorry person. Okay, he don't have a business registrations, or he's just having a small tempo vehicle, and you don't have GST registration, you don't have office. He will not issue invoice. Simply, he will collect 1,000 rupees from me and he will take the materials from my factory to the customer place. Okay, since he is not giving invoice, since he is not charging GST, as a businessman, as a regular GST dealer, I supposed to pay GST in the RCM method and I can take an input tax credit. Similarly, legal services. You know about the legal services, the service rendered by the legal advisors, lawyers. So they no need to register themselves with the GST department. Okay, so they are suppose most of the time their business income may be less than 20 lakhs, so they may not register with GST. If you are taking some legal services from a lawyer, and if you mention that you are paying 30,000 rupees as professional charges to your lawyer, for the 30,000 you'll be charging RCM and you'll be paying the taxes in the RCM method. So similarly, couriers, which you are sending goods to outside of India. Suppose you have a tie-up with professional courier or some DTTC, etc., and you're sending goods to your customers within it, there is no problem. But if you are sending goods to foreign country, okay, so there is a high possibility your courier, you may not incur such expenses. The buyer may pay such courier charges from the buyers. Okay, so in this scenario, if you incur some courier charges to transport material from India to outside India, where your customer is located. For such expenses, you have to meet the RCM. And any other services from non-taxable persons located outside India. Assume that you have a software programmer is creating some software for your business activities. Okay, he's located outside India. He's a non-taxable person. He is a non-resident. Okay, any situation you can take it. If you are getting some services from them, so since they are not going to charge any taxes, you can pay taxes in the RCM method. Finally, rent. You know about this rent. That is a recent issue everyone is talking about. Suppose if your landlord is not a registered dealer. Assume that I'm having an office in the residential building. That's a small portion, and my landlord is not a businessman. He is not registered with the GST compliances, and he's charging 10,000 rupees as rent. Okay, simply I have to pay 18% GST on the RCM method for the rent which my landlord is collecting. It's not going to be my liability. So initially I'll be paying the taxes and I'll be taking an input tax credit. See, usually you can have the doubt. So government is asking us to pay taxes and take input tax credit. Then where is the benefit to government? There are two benefits. One, on the RCM method, you cannot make the payments through your input tax credits. You'll be paying taxes through the cash payments. I hope you're clear on it, because when there is a liability of 1 lakh, if I have ITC of 1.5 lakhs, so there is a possibility we will be adjusting the liability on the ITC. But in case of RCM, that's why we declare the liabilities as separately. Liability on outward supplies and liability on reverse charge mechanism inward supplies. Okay, if there is a liability of 1,000 rupees on RCM, but I have a huge credit, 1.5 lakhs credit, I'm not supposed to take adjustments from my ITC. I'm supposed to make payment through cash ledger, and I can take the input tax credit. So there are two benefits. One, government is getting fund flow. Another thing is government will be able to identify the businesses. So where they are not able to charge taxes, how much is the volume of businesses handled by such cases, like the farmers selling nuts, yarns, cottons, are there transporters doing a transportation business, or couriers to outside India kind of a activity. So these are all the reason government is charging taxes on RCM. So this is called reverse charge mechanism. Now coming to the main topic, that is application of RCM in TallyPrime. See, Tally is making all our work as simple, because when there is a mistake, when we do some mistakes, it is not considered as we are doing mistakes. So as tax point of view, if it is a small mistake of 100 rupees, 1,000 rupees also considered as the tax evasion. So it is treated that you are doing it deliberately and you will be penalized. So there is a high possibility that dealer may be arrested. That's the highest penalty. That is the highest punishment given for the dealers. To avoid this situation, if you are using TallyPrime, all your works are simplified, like the accounting treatment for the local purchase, interstate purchase, local sales, interstate sales, CZ sales, nil rated, zero rated, or inward supplies related to RCM, etc. is auto-computed. Okay, so based on the configurations, you make it the feature enablement in F11 features, or the ledger level configurations, stock item level configuration will make your work simple. So all your transactions computation will become automatic, and you can file the returns also directly from TallyPrime. That's an advantage. Now, so what are the steps we are going to see it when you are applying RCM in TallyPrime? First thing is enabling the RCM. So enabling reverse charge mechanism for the ledgers and stock item. For example, if there is any stock item your business is involving in the inward supply for which RCM is applicable, or for the ledgers like rent, transport charges, etc. If there is a RCM applicability, I'm going to teach you how to enable it from the ledger creation level itself. And number two, recording of purchase of goods. One is you're buying goods which has RCM, or you're receiving services. That is your inward supply of goods and services. You have to ensure some terminologies. Instead of calling it as purchases, better you can say inward supply of goods or inward supply of services, which is RCM application. And finally, recording the statutory adjustments. Like if there is a RCM, you are going to account it through the purchase entries. Of course, we are going to use a purchase voucher type to account those transactions. Number two, and you are going to record some adjustments. Okay, so you have to increase the liability because of RCM, your liability is increasing, and you are going to account something for the input tax credit also. So we are going to discuss all the three things now, and I'll take you to TallyPrime. Now I have taken a company, Anil and Associates, for this RCM demonstration. So there is nothing to enable from F11 feature. You know very well, GST, we are going to enable, it's an advanced feature in TallyPrime. So we are going to enable it from F11 features. It is already enabled. Okay, so there is nothing related to RCM. We are going to configure the F11 features. So here we can set our GST registration type, GST number, the type of filing GSTR1. And if you are going to file all the returns directly from GST, directly from TallyPrime, you can enable your GST username and password also. And if there is any e-invoice and e-way bill, you can activate through this F11 feature. And then there is an option to set or alter company GST rates and the other details. It is only to enable the GST rate, HSN code, and the type of GST you are going to collect. Okay, so we are not going to enable anything related to RCM here. Okay, so there is an option to enable it, but better we can enable it from the masters, because in 3 stages you can enable GST. One, at the company feature level, it applies to the whole accounting treatment. Number 2, at the masters level, creating ledgers and stock items with GST. Number 3, at the time of posting vouchers. Even if you configure something at the company creation level and master level, it can be altered at the voucher entry level. Right. Now we are going to create some ledgers which has RCM application. I have already created for the easy demonstration. I'll show it through the alter mode. Okay, so ledgers, I've created a ledger, legal services. Okay, I've created a ledger, legal services. This is my inward supply. Assume that in my organization, Anil and Associates, I'm taking services from the lawyer for some of my legal issues. Then I'm supposed to pay legal charges to my lawyer. This attracts RCM. So I'm going to create this under purchase account. Okay, usually we create rent, transportation charges, legal charges, etc. under indirect expenses. But to make it comfortable on the RCM application in TallyPrime, so to make it effective to get reflected on the GST returns, we'll keep this ledger under the group of purchase accounts. Okay, and you can create another group, okay, for RCM purchases, kind of a additional groups also you can create just for the classification purpose. Now you have to make the GST as applicable, and you can mention the GST HSN code and the GST rates in this place. Specify detail. So if you mention as per company, it will take from the F11 features enablement. But now I'm selecting specify details here. I can mention my HSN code. Hope you know about HSN code. Every product has a code. So it is called harmonized system of nomenclature, and every service also has a code. It is called service accounting code, HSN or SAC. Okay, every service has code. Simply services code starts from 99. You have to understand this. And 9982 is nothing but legal and accounting services, the description. It is easy to identify HSN or SAC code. Nowadays, everything is available in Google, and some of the sites, official sites of GST also gives this clarification on HSN code and SAC code and its description. Now, the rate details. You can mention the rates here itself. For the legal services, it's just a service. Okay, you know very well, for all the services, 18% is GST. Okay, except transportation services. For transportation, it is 5% GST. So whether it is a goods transportation, or even you can take a railway transports or the airway transports, they are charging 5% GST. Okay, so taxability type is taxable at the 18%. And this is the area we have to give more importance, that is applicable for reverse charges For this, if reverse charge mechanism is applicable, then mention yes. So we charging 18% GST, that is called forward charges mechanism. But in case of reverse charge mechanism, okay, so you have to enable this option applicable for reverse charges. If you are not able to find this option, better you enable it from F12. Okay, come to the GST details area, and there is an option at the end, enable reverse charge calculation, and the next line, eligible for input tax credit. And also you have to mention whether this RCM is eligible for ITC or not. Okay, so mostly if you are paying taxes on inward supplies through RCM method, such RCM amounts you can claim it as input tax credit. Okay, if you're not able to find it in the ledger level, then press F12 and you can enable it. Okay, so this is one thing. So similarly, you have to select services, goods or capital goods, whichever is applicable. I'm selecting services. Next, I've created another ledger, that is rent. Now for rent also, there is a application of RCM because my landlord is unregistered and my landlord is not going to give GST invoices. So I'm going to pay RCM method. So applicability, however, I'm paying rent to my landlord the same amount. 10,000 is my rent. I'm going to pay 10,000 to him. But internally, I'm going to calculate taxes on it. I'm going to pay it and collect the input tax credit. I'm not going to lose anything. So I'm going to pay and get my ITs. All right. So GST applicability, applicable, specify details. So you can see the difference in the SAC code. For the legal services, it is different. For the accounting, rent of leasing, it is different. And you can specify the rate of GST and application of RCM, yes. And eligible for ITC also, yes. Finally, the type of supply is called services, right? So now I have created a purchase ledger, separate purchase ledger for this purchase entries. Suppose if you buy some materials, earlier we discussed about the services. If you buy some materials, goods for your business, which has RCM, you can use a purchase ledger like this. I've created RCM purchases. It is very important to categorize the purchases. So for the purchases for which the forward charge mechanism is applicable, for the purchases which has RCM is applicable, right? So these classifications will be useful and you will feel it at the time of finalization. GST applicability and the HSN code. So if there is any HSN code for the products which you are buying with RCM, I've selected a product, cashew nuts. So this is the HSN code for the cashew nut. Only for the services, the SAC code starts from 99. For other products, the HSN code is different. And for cashew nuts, the tax rate is 5%. RCM tax rate is 5%. I've taken cashew nut as the example here. Okay, and you're going to create the ledgers of your parties, and there is no specification on GST here. Okay, simply you create your suppliers. For example, I've taken Mr. Ashish as my landlord. Usually I create the ledgers like this for my easy understanding. I used to classify my trade creditors and other creditors. Ashish is my landlord, is coming under sundry creditors. He don't have GST registration. If he has GST registration, if he is a regular dealer, he'll be charging under forward charge mechanism. Okay. So since he is an unregistered dealer, I'm selecting unregistered dealer. There is no other GST specification. Similarly, Mr. Uday is my legal advisor. He is also unregistered dealer. Okay. So he's not going to register his business with GST. So, and also my supplier, Raghav Enterprises. Assume that Raghav Enterprises has GST. Okay. But they are not going to charge GST on cashew nuts. You can take them as unregistered dealer also. That's not a problem. Assume that you are buying cashews directly from the farmer. He's an unregistered dealer as they are dealing with the exempted products. So he can be an unregistered dealer. But in this example, I've taken that is a registered dealer just to show the differences. That's all. I've mentioned his GST number also. So I've created some of the ledgers, that is the inward supply. So inward supply of services, which has RCM, and the suppliers ledger, which has RCM. And there are tax ledgers. There is no classification. It's a normal tax ledger, CGST under duties and taxes. There's no special on it. Normal tax ledgers, SGST, that's all. And I've created purchase ledger also. Similarly, we have to create these stock items. I've already created the stock item, cash unit. So under primary, I've created, it's our wish. The thing is, we have to mention the unit of measures compulsorily, and we have to make GST as applicable, and we have to mention the GST specifications like HSN code, GST rates, etc. 8013 is HSN code for tax. And the tax rate also we have specified here. Actually, I have specified the tax rates in purchase ledger also, and I've mentioned in the item master also. And similarly, we have to mention the application of reverse charge and the eligibility of input tax credit and goods. Now, let us pass some entries, that is purchase of goods which has RCM. We'll take the example transactions for the May dated. I'll select the purchase voucher type, normal purchase voucher type. Assume that my supplier is giving some bill dated 1st May, and I'm changing the voucher type into item invoice because I'm buying goods which has RCM, item invoice. I'm selecting a party, Raghav Enterprises. He's a registered dealer only, but he's supplying cash units for which he will not charge forward charge mechanism basis. Instead, as a buyer, I'm going to pay RCM method. I'm just selecting 1,000 rupees per kg. I'm selecting the purchase ledger. I have only one purchase ledger right now, so I've selected the RCM purchase ledger. Now, that's all. Nothing. I'm not going to select CGST and SGST because my supplier is not going to give invoice with CGST and SGST. Okay. So now you have to understand that when I'm buying material which has RCM, it's a simple procedure to account it without GST. Anyway, Tally will calculate the RCM which is included in the total purchase value. Assume that 1 lakh is the purchase value. I'm going to pay 1 lakh to my supplier, but I'm going to pay 5,000 additionally to the tax department just for the accounting treatment. And again, I'm going to take it back as a input tax credit. We'll check whether the RCM is calculated in this transaction or not. Okay, it's an easy procedure. After you pass the transaction in the respective voucher type, you can find an option Control O, that is related reports. A related report is nothing but GST analysis. We want to see the GST analysis. How much is the GST charged on this particular transaction? Just click, you can find GST analysis, type enter. Now, you can easily find the RCM taxes. So total purchase value is 1 lakh, but since it is cashew, since it has RCM, Tally calculates the tax liability, which is included on the particular value, that is 1 lakh rupees, and 5% on it. Totally, it is coming around 5,000 rupees. See the last line, amount of tax subject to reverse charge. That's all. Okay, so just press escape and complete this transaction. Similarly, for the month of May, I'm going to pay legal charges to my legal advisor. Okay, so now you should know how to change the invoice of item invoice into the accounting invoice. So trading organizations, when they're handling materials, they'll be using item invoice. Okay, when they are handling services, they're supposed to change it to accounting invoice. So it's very easy, change the pattern of invoice from item to account. We have an option change mode. Control H is the shortcut key. I'm changing it to accounting invoice. You can use separate voucher types also. Better you create a separate voucher types. That's the advice. That's a best practice. Now you can see the change. That is the particulars instead of the name of the item. Now I'm going to mention that I'm paying around 30,000 to my legal advisor as legal charges. Simply 30,000 I'm going to pay, but Tally will calculate GST on it. Just check related reports, tax analysis. So in 30,000, 5,400 is the tax amount. Okay. Now I'm going to accept transaction. There are two transactions I have passed right now. One is the buying of cashew nuts. That is the product purchased with the RCM applicability. Number two, the service, inward supply of services, which is RCM. Okay, we'll pass one more entry for rent. That is a need of moment for everyone. So Ashish is my landlord. I'm just passing the provision entry. You have to understand. Making payment is different. Passing provision entry is different. Okay, so assume that I'm going to pay rent of 30,000 rupees. So this also includes my RCM. Just to ensure this, I'm showing the screen. Local purchases. If your landlord is located other than your state, assume that is located in Tirupati. This company is created with the GST of 33, that is Tamil Nadu code. Your landlord is located in Tirupati, then you will be charging IGST RCM. That's a difference. Okay. So this is CGST and SGST. That is why it is called local purchases. Now I'm going to save this transaction. I'll take you to GSTR 3B, in which you'll be showing the outward tax liability and also inward liabilities due to RCM. Okay, there are different methods to reach your GSTR 3B. You have a display of reports and statutory reports, then GSTR 3B. Or simply from any screen, you can use Alt G, that is go to option. That is the main advantage of TallyPrime. GSTR 3B. Now I'm going to see my 3B report for the month of May. I'm taking an example for May month. See, you can see the report. Tax on outward supplies and reverse charge inward supplies. For both, we have a liability. Okay, so outward supply is nothing but the sales. But inward supplies, which attracts RCM. Your normal sales will appear on the 3.1A, 1B, and 1C. That is your B2B sales, B2C sales, SEZ sales, export sales, etc. comes in the 3.1A, 1B, and 1C. And your inward supplies. This is something new to us. Usually for the outward supplies only, we will be having a liability. Even for the inward supply, there is anything called RCM that appears in the 3.1D. So just enter this transaction. You can find list of 3.1D, which is nothing but inward supplies, which attracts RCM. First one is the purchase of goods, that is cashew. Second one is the legal advisor's charges. Third one, the rent, which is paid to the landlord, who is a unregistered dealer. Right? Now, this is how you are going to account your RCM inward supplies. This is the second thing you have learned today. Number three, first is enabling RCM in the masters. Number two is accounting entries. Number three, very important thing is adjustments. Now you go to your balance sheet and find your GST liability under duties and taxes. Nothing. Because we have not used CGST and SGST ledgers, we have not increased our liability. RCM is nothing but increasing our liability. But we have not increased our liability. And also, there is nothing called ITC here. Okay, so even I'll press F2 and I'll show you with the show transactions. This is nothing but your RCM. We'll see it for the May month. That's for the April. We'll see it for the May month. Nothing. So what we're supposed to do, we have to pass some adjustment entries. So in this adjustment, we are going to increase our liability and we are going to increase our ITC. Both we are going to do. Because you know very well in RCM, we are paying taxes by ourselves, and in future we are going to claim it as a input tax credit. Both the scenarios, we are going to pass only one entry. We are going to increase the tax liability and we are going to claim it as input tax credit. Okay, it is on 31st May. Usually we have to pass this kind of adjustment entries on the 31st May, 31st of every month. Okay. Now you are going to use voucher type journal, and you can find an option called stat adjustments. That is the statutory adjustments. Shortcut key is Alt J. Statutory adjustments. You should not select the debit and credit ledgers without selecting statutory adjustments. Now I'm selecting statutory adjustments. Type of duties GST. Even for TDS also we can use this option GST. And for which reason you are using this option? One, increasing the tax liability. Number two, increasing the input tax credit. Both. I'm going to increase my tax liability of CGST as GST. The same amount I'm going to claim it as input tax credit. Enter. An additional nature of adjustments. What is the reason? First, purchase from unregistered dealer. So I'm going to mention the increase in liability and increase in input tax credit for the goods which we have purchased from unregistered dealer. That is the legal advisor and my landlord. Okay. Number two, purchase under reverse charge mechanism from a registered dealer. We are going to show it separately. That's all. Right. First, we will mention the purchases under reverse charge mechanism from the registered dealers. Very simple. Select CGST for the 2.5% tax applicable on the cash units purchased for our 1 lakh. That's all. There's nothing but 2,500. Debit means I'm increasing my liability. Okay. Debit all expenses. Apply the rule. Debit all expenses. Now I'm increasing my liability. CGST, SGST, also the same work on the SGST. That's all. Now I have increased my liability. That means because of the purchase of cash units, I'm liable to pay 5,000 rupees as RCM. Now, again, I'm going to select CGST in the credit for 2,500 and SGST on the credit for 2,500. This credit is nothing but my ITC. In the debit, if you mention CGST and SGST, it is nothing but you are going to avail ITC. In the credit, if you are going to mention the CGST, SGST, you are going to increase your liability. You can observe the screen. Very simple. And select provide additional GST details. Select the party because of whom you are getting this RCM. This is the reason we have mentioned registered and unregistered separately. Raghav is a registered dealer. Even though he is a registered dealer, the product which he is dealing will not apply forward charge mechanism. So is not going to issue invoice with GST, for which I'm going to pay RCM. Just select it. Since we made all the configurations earlier, it comes automatically. That's all. Now, I'm going to make statutory adjustments for the increasing liability for legal advisors, unregistered dealer, legal advisor. CGST 9%. 9 you can mention, it takes a percentage automatically on 30,000, which is 2,700. And again, debit is GST 9% on 30,000, which is 2,700. Okay. So you have to understand the concept. So it is equal to assets. Input credits are equal to assets. When we buy some asset, it will be debited. Increase in asset will be debited. Coming to the liability credit, your liabilities. Again, I'm selecting CGST, but it's 2,700. SGST 30,000, 9%, which is nothing but 2,700. Now I'm increasing my liability on the legal services. Select yes and select the party because of whom your RCM is calculated. Uday, legal advisor. Change it to services. Again, for the landlord, one more entry, I'm going to pass it for the landlord. CGST. I forgot to select the start adjustments. Deliberately I did it because you should feel the difference. Okay. Only if you select the start adjustment, then only after selecting the CGST ledger, you'll be getting the GST applicability. Otherwise, you will not get GST applicability. Just see that after selecting CGST ledger, immediately I'll get GST applicability rates and the taxable value. Debit, credit, CGST. See, in the screen, you have to observe. Usually, when I'm accounting, I select CGST first and SGST next. That is the system I used to follow. Okay, see, it's not like sometimes I select SGST first, sometimes I select SCGST first. There is a high possibility of selecting the same ledger again and again. See, this is nothing but a mistake. I'm selecting CGST twice. Instead of selecting CGST and SGST, I've selected CGST twice. There is a high possibility. So better you have some practices of selecting CGST first and SGST next. Even while raising sales invoice also, you can follow this pattern. And I'm selecting provide GST details. I'm selecting the landlord. And it comes as unregistered dealer automatically. And finally, select the services. Now I've created a liability and also I'm going to take input tax credit on it. Okay, we'll see whether the liability is created or not. Go to balance sheet and check your duties and taxes for the period of May. Okay, so now press F12 and see show transactions activated. Then Tally will show you the liability on the credit side and the input tax credit on the debit side. So now it is 5,400. Enter, you can see the values. 5,400 on the legal services and rent and 2,500 on the goods purchases. So now you refer your GST or PB. Again, changing the month. You can see the difference. It's coming in 3.1D. Use Shift Enter so that you can see the details. And in the input tax credit column, you can find the input tax credit available as 7,500. So you have to get enter, Shift Enter, then you can see it detailed. This is your ITC. This is your liability and this is your ITC on the RCM, right? So this is how we account the RCM related transactions in TallyPrime. Very simple. First, you enable the inward supply ledgers with RCM and the rate of RCM and whether it is applicable for ITC or not. That is the first thing. And if there is any stock item involved, create the stock items with the GST applicability and RCM applicability along with ITC availment. This, and you have to pass the entries. Very simple. We are going to pass the provision entries. For the purchase of goods, you'll be using purchase vouchers only. That's not a different thing we are doing. But for the inward supplies, other than purchase also, if there is any inward supply which has RCM, better use the voucher type purchases. Then only you can find the RCM informations directly on your GST returns. Otherwise, you have to do it manually. So when you are prepared to file GST returns directly from Tally, there are two modes. One, you can generate JSON files from Tally and upload it in GST portal. And number two, you can directly file your GST returns from Tally itself. That is the option available from release 5.0. GST returns automatically. Right. So this is how we are going to enable RCM in our TallyPrime. I have some important announcements for you. So if you are using the lowest edition in Tally, that is, if you are not using TallyPrime, still if you are using Tally ERP9, okay, yourself or your friends or someone who's using Tally ERP9, just advise them the Tally is going to stop all its support for Tally ERP9. Of course, it's successfully 4 years completed. So we are not supposed to use the older versions. It's better to use latest version, that is TallyPrime. If anyone is using Tally ERP9, they would have not updated their TSS, Tally Software Services. Now they are getting an offer of 50%. Just for 2,250 plus GST of 18%, they can upgrade their version from ERP9 to Prime. This offer is only for the short period, that is up to 6th March only. So if you are using ERP9, still it is better to convert from your Tally to TallyPrime. Now for the single user, it is just 2,250 plus GST. For the multi-user, it is 6,750 plus GST. This offer is only for the short period. It's nothing but 50% off on their old TSS rates. And this is for the coming webinar schedules. Next session is on Thursday, that is 13th February, how to manage inventory effectively in TallyPrime. So in this session, I'm going to teach you how to manage your inventories with batches. So if you maintain the stock items with batches, you would find it in the medical shops and the FMCG products. They follow the batches, old batch, new batch, 2014 batch, 2022 batch, to identify the age of the product. Okay, because always we prefer to push out the old product. So last in, first out, because the old product will get expired. Sometimes it will become perished. To avoid that situation, we use last in, first out. So to manage that kind of transactions, I'm going to teach you how to enable batches on your stock item in the coming week. That is 13th February. Our support numbers are given here. If you have any queries on Tally or related to this webinar or converting your ERP9 into Prime, you can reach us through these numbers. Thank you very much for your participation.